And all right, it's been about that minute, so let's go ahead and get started. Let's get started with those introductions. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today for Carving a Path Forward, our webinar session where we'll be talking with 3 CTE teachers from Springs Charter Schools. I'm Rob, and I'm a school partnerships manager here at Study.com. I have the privilege of being your host today, bringing about 11 years of experience working in EdTech, and I have many of those years focused on working with CTE programs across the country. So I'm excited to introduce our guests today, 3 teachers from Springs Charter Schools, CITE program. They also include internships with their program. Miss Angela Caceres, Mr. Bernard Hammil, and Miss Jenny Younker. Thank you so much for the 3 of you for joining us today. Can you each take a moment to introduce yourselves, a bit of your background, what you teach, and how long you've been teaching? Let's go alphabetically. Angela, can we start with you?
Hi, yeah, again, my name is Angela Caceres, and this is my 6th year teaching with River Springs Charter. And I teach the family education and human services pathways. So my background is in human development and counseling, and I have a private practice where I specialize in social emotional learning. I have an experiential program. So thanks again for having me, Rob. I appreciate it.
Oh, thanks so much for joining us today, Angela. Appreciate that. Bernard, how about you next?
Hi, my name is Bernard Hammil. I teach the public safety pathway here at Springs, which includes basically a law enforcement type of class, and next year we'll be starting emergency response management. My background is I spent almost 30 years working as a deputy sheriff in LA and Orange counties before retiring and decided to get into teaching. And when I decided to go full-time, CTE was the obvious way to go about it because I didn't want to go back into science.
Sounds good, Bernard. And hopefully this is a good way for you to enjoy that retirement. I'm sure it keeps you busy.
It does.
And thank you so much as well for joining us. And last but not least, Jenny.
Hi guys, I am Jenny Yonker, and my background is in medical assisting and physical education. I have been with Springs teaching PE and CTE for 9 years now. I teach 3 pathways in the health science and medical technology industry sector. So I teach a patient care pathway, an allied health pathway, and a biotech pathway.
Thank you so much, Jenny. And thank you each again for being with us today. I think it's wonderful that we're able to not bring just 3 CTE teachers together, but 3 very distinct pathways as well, right? Quite unique from each other. So I'm excited to have you all share with our audience your experiences with Study.com. For example, why Study was adopted at Springs, how we've impacted your students, and how our library helps you as teachers. But before we get to that, I want to back up just a little bit to maybe giving our audience a little bit of an idea of what your lives were like before Study.com. So if we can start there, and maybe with Jenny, where did you used to go for content? How long did it take you? And for our audience, please do feel free to share in the chat some of your favorite sources for instructional content or CTE content.
Okay, so I'm sure like a lot of other CTE teachers that have joined us here at Springs, CTE teachers, we largely write our own courses. So even the courses that we have that are part of like a college articulated course that has a syllabus, we're still largely in charge of the daily curriculum.
Wow.
And so before Study.com, I was spending so much time creating my own content, my own videos. Maybe they're kind of boring and not so great, but spent a lot of time on them. And then, you know, teachers pay teachers and trying to just reach out to everywhere for content, YouTube, textbooks, just any source that I can to filter through to make sure I was getting my students the material that they needed to meet that syllabus, but also to meet the CTE state standards as well. So a lot of hours, a lot of time creating and searching.
Wow. Yeah. So glad to hear that. Bernard, how about you? What were you doing before Study?
Pretty similar. We should probably preface this. Our courses are mostly online based. We do have in-person settings, but we have to create a large amount of material online, basically all the stuff that the students need that we deliver to them through Canvas. So I was looking all over teachers to pay teachers, CTE online, going through old material I had from when I taught at the academy. and just whatever I could create, and the college stuff through their syllabus and their textbooks, and picking and choosing what I could develop. So a lot of time just constantly creating and recreating the wheel every year.
Yeah, so pouring a lot of yourself into developing the content you need to keep up with the curriculum as well. How about you, Angela?
Yeah, same. I mean, when I came into Springs, I had never taught in a classroom. All of my teaching was experiential. So coming in, it was like, I definitely have never been in a traditional setting, and I certainly have never used like traditional materials like textbooks and such. So at first it was like, bring that experiential stuff into the classroom, right? But when it came to teaching theory and all of the nuts and bolts of psychology and that kind of thing, I was spending all my time trying to find reputable, content that I could deliver to the students, while still really trying to focus on building the relationships. Because for those of you in human services, teaching human services is right, human connection, right? So it's like, I wanted to spend all my time teaching those skills, those employable skills. And instead I was, just spending all of my time searching the internet, searching textbooks, trying to extract information to get that content delivered to them in a way that, they could take it in.
Absolutely.
So lots of time.
Yeah. So the clear common thread here is it cost you all and a lot of time, right? And I heard mainly there in the responses that it was largely around searching, but you all mentioned also an aspect of creation, production, and building, right? Which then leads you almost down another rabbit hole of video software production, learning file sizes and image types and how to remove backgrounds for certain things to get them built into videos, right? And so just to confirm, what you all just described was just about kind of everyday life, week in, week out, right? What your life was like as a teacher without Study.com. I would love to bring into the conversation a really important aspect, I think, specific to CTE, which are the curriculum changes, right? And something to really make sure that our audience is aware of, and if you're a CTE teacher, you probably agree with this already, is that CTE is a department or program within education that doesn't just react to state and district level curriculum changes. You all have to respond to industry changes, right? People working in the field, policy changes, in certain fields, changes to OSHA and safety, things like that, right? So can the three of you kind of talk about what it's like in facing or having to react to having multiple external pressures kind of force your hand at building this content and keeping up with curriculum? How does Study help you when that happens?
Well, one thing I could add is the fact that Study has such relevant content. It's all very current, very relevant. And I think that even in my search for, it doesn't matter what the topic is, I can always find something in your library that will address whatever it is I'm trying to convey. And it's all very current and very relevant. So that has helped me several times when I've had to pivot quickly and find content to address something that's changed either within our organization or what we're hearing from those professionals out in the industry.
Amazing. How about you, Bernard? You also mentioned completely online, which is an aspect.
Yeah, so when I first came to Springs, we were traveling between campuses and doing one day at each campus per week and then online. And then, of course, COVID hit and we moved completely online. And since then, at least for CTE, we went to an accelerated instruction that didn't allow us to travel to campuses anymore. So, or not as often, I should say. And so we really had to move everything online. And just that pivot alone and having to fill out our courses where we were not going to be able to be in a classroom as much to give that one-on-one instruction or that chance to fill in the gaps as easily. Study has really helped me out in that way. I teach, a part of my course is forensics. I don't have a forensics background. I mean, I have knowledge of it from my training, but nowhere near as extensive as the course I was able to find on Study and put in. And the level then that the kids are now getting from their forensics instruction is just increased tremendously. And I should add, my side business, when I was with the Sheriff's Department, I ran a photo video production business.
Oh, wow.
Doing doing dance studios and stuff like that. So I'm familiar with all the
So
material, but it still doesn't mean I have the resources to carry out. I can record whatever I want, but I don't have the ability to create that kind of material and the resources that I find on Study.com that can, I mean, I could do it. It's going to take me weeks to make one
that's what I was
video
just
that I
going to say.
find.
Yeah,
on
you
Study,
might have a
so,
little bit of the background, especially managing photography, image files, right? But then spending the time building out scenes, adding text, getting the, I mean, forbid that you have to dive into any kind of image license,
right.
right?
And,
As
and,
part of
and to
your
keep it
videos or production
entertaining
process.
at the same time. It's the production. There's just no way I could carry that out and teach at the same time.
Yeah, so, Jenny, I'm going to get to you in a second, but it sounds like between Angela and Bernard, there are all these other things that were kind of pulling you away from your core, right? Which is this great experience in industry that you can give yourself, parts of yourself, and your experiences over to your student. But largely, it sounds like you're prevented doing that before study simply because you had to spend your time, pursuing these other paths to build out content and curriculum as well. And Jenny, I think, you all had shared with me, directing the question to you, each of you are a lone teacher in your pathways. Is that right? I would love for you to speak to that aspect, because not just having to react to two different external pressures, right, in terms of curriculum changes, but then not having another teacher to work with, to share in the work, right? Can you speak to that a little bit, Jenny?
Yeah, definitely. So yes, each of us are in charge of our own pathway, and some of us multiple pathways. And so it's just us. It's just us meeting all of these demands. So it's just us going to the regional advisories and connecting with those business partners and finding what's current in industry, as well as making sure that we're meeting all of those for the courses that our college are articulating, meeting all of the requirements for that course, and meeting those state standards for CTE, all while I'm sure every teacher can attest to this as well, having the students for less and less amount of time. Well, we need to teach them more and more, right? There's always more. They need to know this, they need to know this, on top of the things that we're already, building up. And so when it's just one person trying to make sure that all of our stuff is current, as well as meeting what's new, there's no one to split the work up with. Like, hey, you do this unit maybe, and I'll do this unit, and we'll come together. Maybe we can add our own personal touches to it in the classroom, but there is none of that. It's all us. We're making sure the online content is getting there, that all the students have access to it. If they're not seat-based, if they're not like in an academy, that they have access to that work. If they miss a day that we're supposed to be with them, they have access to that work, and it's all in the front, right? So we build it before the students get to it. It's not like we're building it daily. So it's, a lot of work for one person.
Right. So yeah, important having the right resources as well, right? I think, Angela, it was you that mentioned in your response, not just talking about the search, but if things could change and you didn't have that resource previously built to kind of translate or migrate to digital, having the confidence, right, that you have a resource that's going to allow you to quickly do that, right? So I think there's a big benefit, and it's wonderful to hear all of that feedback from you. And thanks so much for sharing with us about the lead up, because I think our audience, as well as myself, has a very clear understanding of why you'd be seeking something like Study.com, which brings us to a little bit of the adoption, right, and your CTE program. I believe, Angela, you had mentioned to me when we first started chatting that there was a little bit of pushback when you first started wanting to use Study.com, or when you're using Study.com, mostly around a discomfort of not using textbooks. Have those feelings changed?
I think so. The proof is in the numbers, right? So like the students are excelling, they are completing the courses, they're engaged, and I do a survey in my courses about midway through, and then at the end I do an exit interview. Tell me, what was your experience like? What did you really like about the class and the format? And every single time I love the videos. It's like we talked about it before, today's students, they're just taking information in at such a fast, pace, this generation of students. And you know, they loved the video format and to be able to get straight to the point. You're able to convey the terminology that you need to get across, to convey the main points in a way that they can take it in, right? They watch the videos and then they also watch the transcripts. So they are loving the format, and I've had higher engagement, higher success than I've ever had when I implemented the videos from Study.com. Yeah, it's been awesome.
So amazing.
So I'm not hearing much more. I mean, I'm not hearing anything really lately about the textbooks. I think
Great.
The numbers are there, so I think it's helping.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, thank you so much, Angela. It's wonderful. And for the audience, we will get to some of the student impact and the student engagement later on in the session with the three of them. But Bernard and Jenny, I think in terms of even finding a textbook to kind of move the question or change the question a bit for both of you, not only that resistance, but was there any ability to even locate a textbook for your pathways?
I'll go ahead. For my pathway, the first year, no, there's no textbook, because I'm covering everything from report writing to mental health and responses to morals and ethics. I mean, yeah, there's not one textbook. Maybe I could download 6 or 7 of them to try and cover that variety of subjects. My second year is an articulated course with the college, and so there are 2 textbooks if you take it at the college, but my coursework is not exactly the same as the college. I just have to cover kind of the same material that they do. And so the textbook's really dry. One, it's aimed at college students. It's not going to entertain a high school student, number one. And yeah, they just get it much better from the videos and the material that I'm able to pull from Study.com and mix and match and make my custom lessons based on what you guys offer versus out of the textbook.
Right. Jenny, anything to add?
Yeah, definitely. Same place as Bernard. Basically, in the courses that are college articulated, they're definitely textbooks, but even the college courses, they're like 2-3 textbooks for one class. And then to add in all of the actual technical training that we need to add into that, you know, there's no textbook. Some CTE teachers out there in the world are starting to write textbooks, and that's awesome. And those are available. But again, it's just another added resource, another book the students have to pick up. And then it's overwhelming. And not only that, but again, teaching students how to read a textbook is something that needs to be taught to them. And we have such limited time with them to get this core content to them that, you know, it is important to teach them how to read the textbooks, but you could spend an entire semester on just that. So,
right. No, and I think this is
a Study.com with bringing it to Springs, and she had that pushback with textbooks, and I think we were all feeling that, and we've all kind of not been feeling that anymore.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that Study and our library and resources has been able to have that impact, not just on your teaching and instruction, but more largely the school. And it sounds like some leadership. And I think this is a perfect segue, right? Because Angela, you called it out briefly about kind of how students engage with content these days, right? Attention spans. And then Bernard went into the textbooks being too dry as well, and Jenny doubled down on that. I think, you know, one of the things in CTE that I'd love to talk with the three of you about is the value of the flipped classroom, right? And a big thing that's supporting or preventing an effectively flipped classroom is your student engagement, retention, comprehension, right, of the content you send home. So just think of myself and being completely honest. If you gave me a textbook and you told me to read chapter 2 and I read it and I didn't understand chapter 2, there is no chance I'm going to reopen that textbook and reread chapter 2 so that I hopefully understand it. I'm going straight to the homework questions and the glossary move, right? Back in the old days. So it sounds like maybe one of the benefits or one of the reasons your students may be engaging as well is because they're used to, almost conditioned, right? They grew up with Google, they grew up with YouTube. I will gladly click back to the 20-second mark and watch another 8 seconds and have them re-explain it to me. But chances of me rereading chapter 2, 0.
Not gonna happen.
Right? So I think that gives us a really great lead into the flipped classroom. And each of you have a clear need, right, for practical skill application.
Mhm.
What we talked about in Life Before Study was the idea, if I had to generalize, that you spent a lot of time finding content from others to give to your students,
Mhm.
right? And effectively flipping the classroom allows you to take back a lot of that face-to-face instruction time, where now you're giving them less of other people and more of yourself, right? So can you say there's a higher need for you in CTE or any one of your pathways for that hands-on experiential education instruction?
I'll go ahead and start this one. And it may be a biased thing as a CTE teacher too. So nothing against like core subject teachers, but I do feel because we are teaching skills for employability, and with us specifically at Springs, to get them into an internship and to get them some of those skills that can, so that those the leaders there at the organization will look at them and say, hey, you know what, we can actually use this individual beyond what, you know, we originally intended, to get them some experience. So that is our goal, right? We are, it's not just college ready, but like this career readiness and getting them those skills. So I think absolutely, if we have such limited time with them too in person, and we're spending all of that time reviewing all of the material and all the questions that they have because they didn't engage in the material, we have less time to teach them those skills that they need, that we're supposed to be for as CTE teachers teaching them. So I absolutely think that there is a greater need in CTE for that flipped classroom.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Angela or Bernard, do you have anything to add?
I would agree. And I think a key to remember for CTE is we're project based. You know, so their big test assignments are projects. And for me, that means they have to show that they can do a crisis negotiation, or they can work a DNA lab, or, you know, a variety of things. And when I'm only meeting with them once every couple of weeks for 2 hours, I don't have time to teach them the skills that they need to negotiate at that moment. They need to be able to execute it with some corrections in front, you know, with me correcting bits and pieces, or they need to understand the theory behind DNA and replication before we do the DNA lab in the classroom. And so being able to, that flipped classroom, having them do all that studying at home with check assignments every day to make sure they're understanding it. And then we meet that one time or those 2 times to go through their project. I think it's a necessity the way our classes are set up now to do that flipped classroom. I don't know how we could do it any other way.
Yeah, so
Right.
not even the scale of how important it is. It's mandatory. It's a
Yeah,
need.
Right.
pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Angela, how about you?
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. I think that also the fact that you know, some of these subjects we teach are really, really broad, right? So if I can give students, you know, a couple of, you know, Study.com videos to get the content, like the, you know, terminology and the concepts, and then when we're together, it's, you know, like Bernard mentioned, we're project based, but we're mastery based, you know. So for them to master a particular subject, it's practice, right? So it's like, if I can give them the information at home, like this is the terminology, we're talking about this theory of you know, attachment, then guess what, when they come to in the classroom, or now we're online, we have discussions, it can be surrounding that, and then it gives us an additional opportunity to personalize their education as well. Because I'll have a student come in and they're like in human services, but I've got one student who's super pumped about, you know, criminal psychology. Then I have somebody else who's interested in like abnormal psych, you know, or, you know, something else. It's like, well, how do I fire them all up with their passion and their interest if I'm just kind of going over this overarching, you know, psychology concept, right? Instead, with Study.com, I can look and give personalized videos, and then when we're together, you know, we can bring it together and practice it and have dialogue about it. And it's just
Right.
it's incredible to be able to do
Right.
that.
And it's honestly just occurred to me that for your 3 pathways as well, not just, of course, the intention and the purpose of educating your students and helping them reach skill mastery, there are practical real world consequences for your students heading into these fields, aren't there? Or consequences for others that they may work with, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I love to hear that, you know, this is that time exchange, right? And the
Mhm.
strategic buyback of being able to spend more of that time. That's so necessary, as Bernard said, right, on the practical skill application and working that student level, which is a great kind of transition into the student impact, right? We've all talked about, Bernard, Jenny, and Angela, you saving time, having the confidence, having the right resource. And then we started down a little bit about seeing the increase or the improvement of engagement by students. So you're saving time to be allocated to other important tasks. How are you seeing your students engage with the content? Bernard, sorry, Angela or Jenny.
It's okay, sorry. Okay, because mine's going to be short and sweet, really. It's before Study.com, it was less than 50% engagement, to be perfectly honest. And now it's nearly 100. So my students engaged, love it. They're doing what they need to do and they're understanding it.
That's amazing. Bernard, were you, or Angela, I'm sorry.
Excuse me, sorry. I'll add to that. And Jenny, with your numbers, also just completing the courses, right? So like if they get through both of our courses, we have 2 courses for each pathway, and for them to get to completion and be able to receive all of those units and potentially be employable with just those 2 classes, I mean, that's incredible. And we're seeing a much higher rate. I don't know the percentage right off the top of my head as far as completion goes, but I know that it's through the roof compared to where we were before Study.com.
Wow, that's amazing, because that's effectively opening up some options above them, right? In terms of college and career and what they can explore and get into. What about you, Bernard?
I'm seeing similar. What I'm also seeing is an increase in the quality of the work that they're turning in. When we met with them in person at the academies, I always had much better feedback in my in-person classes than I had in my online classes, just because I was there every day to talk to them and work things through and through this process. And when we went on all online, I saw a huge drop off. And some of that probably had to do with COVID and staying home, but I saw a huge drop off in online, and I get it. My content online was probably not exciting. And now my online students are just phenomenal in the work that they're turning in. And I think it's because the material is becoming much more engaging to them. They're getting much better feedback from me on what they're turning in based on more difficult lessons or more pressing lessons, I guess I should say. And so the quality of what I'm seeing shows me that they're engaging much more in the material rather than just skimming it and trying to take the quiz to get out of the day's work.
Thanks so much, Bernard. Yeah, and I think it's so great that you also included a little bit of the why you think you're seeing the change in students. Let's go reverse order to Angela and then Jenny. Angela and Jenny, do you have maybe 2 or 3 reasons why you think you're seeing this positive change or the effects in your student follow through?
I think that it's meeting them where they're at. We talked a little bit about this before in our previous chats, like being able to understand the student, right, and where they're at and how they learn. You're going to get a lot more in the relationship with them, right, because they're seen. And, every human being just wants to be seen, right? And especially that age group, adolescents, they've got a lot of struggles in this generation, right? And so being able to see them and meet them where they're at and give them content in a way that, like I said before, developmentally they can take in, I think that has a huge impact. And I also will take it a step further, just specifically for human services. Again, talking about, the need to be practicing and be with humans, Study.com offers a lot of really cool videos that I was really surprised, because even in teaching this content, which is difficult to teach sometimes online, I love how they use it in almost like role plays. So it gives the student an opportunity, even though they may not be in person with me every time, they're able to see a particular scenario acted out or application in that way. And that's super important, especially for human services. So definitely the format.
That makes a ton of sense. Yeah, the brief videos are approachable and consumable. How about you, Jenny?
Yeah, definitely. To add to that, students, the bite-sized pieces, absolutely. It makes the content more accessible to them, really. Within their attention span, and that relevance, and the level of it, right? Meeting them at their level. Like I think Bernard mentioned before, some of the stuff is like higher college level stuff that, hey, they might not be prepared for this as high school students. And some of them even need, you know, a lesson even lower than that, and Study.com offers that. So I would say that absolutely. Another thing is the, you know, amount of time that they're spending with the material. When that kind of plays off number one, right? The students are engaging with it because, you know, they can do one lesson here, and then a little bit later they could do another lesson.
Right,
it doesn't have to be sit down and spend an hour reading, right? It could be broken up. And then they have more of me. So because I'm not like stretched thin, because all of my energy is being put into creating the lessons, then they have more of the best that I have to offer. Like Bernard mentioned before, you know, those skills that I can share, or those experiences that I can share. And then also just, you know, feedback. Like I can provide better feedback to them. I can do it in more timely manner because I have the time to do it. So I would say those are my top three.
No, and those, yeah, go ahead, Bernard.
Talk about meeting them where they're at and more time with the feedback. You know, I teach all my students have to learn report writing, and that's one of the biggest complaints by police departments and fire departments is the quality of writing. And I'm sure there's any English teachers in this webinar, they'll understand where I'm coming from. But everybody's got a different problem. One student can't tell a story, but he's got impeccable writing. Another one can't capitalize or know what a homonym is. And in my feedback, I can link them. I can create a custom lesson for them in Study.com that says, hey, you need some basic functionality. Let's call it middle school English class, and you need a creative writing class. And I can balance that based on what the student needs, which has been really nice, rather than me spending online, especially typing paragraphs and paragraphs, trying to explain to them what they're doing wrong, you know, and correcting that. So
I think that's an amazing addition. And I'm going to attempt to kind of chain together, right? Where we started off, we kind of talked about your time before study was spent just finding the content, right? So as we're getting now to this part of the story of all your stories, where you're starting to be able to give more of yourself using Jenny's words, right, to your students. And we all know that that's really the goal. But saving time doing that allowed you to have a consistent tool for content to deliver to students. It increased their engagement as well as comprehension and follow through. And then that kind of circled you back to you all, allowing you to further personalize and individualize instruction because it so effectively flipped your classroom. Students are coming back to class on those practical days saying, okay, how do I do this instead of what is this, right? That's amazing. And so if it's okay, I think it's so important. And there's a wonderful story here for the audience to hear. A bit about how the CTE program at Springs has evolved over the year, right? And Jenny, you or Angela or Bernard, I think all three of you have mentioned it over the course of this chat. But career education and college prep, right? And kind of bringing that idea into the mix. I'm of the big belief that college prep is part of career education, right? And so Jenny, sharing with the audience, was actually one of the original CTE teachers at Springs. Jenny, as well as Bernard and Angela, of course. But starting with Jenny, can you share with us a little bit about how you've seen the program evolve?
Yeah, I'd love to. So it's always been great. I do want to put that out there, but it has definitely improved and evolved. At the very beginning, there were just a couple of pathways. Like we have healthcare, engineering, right? And we had a lot of classes, excuse me, for each of those pathways. So there were tons of classes in there. And then we had a lot of different teachers teaching these at different locations because we have so many different academies which our students attend. And they weren't really accessible to anyone that was somebody other than an academy student. So like homeschool students, other types of attendance students, like if they go to a 3-day-a-week program or whatnot, like it wasn't accessible to them. So over time, we've actually grown the number of pathways that we offer, and we've shortened the number of classes that go with each pathway so students can actually finish all of the classes in their time during high school. And then we've increased the accessibility to students that are distance learning, and definitely increased our number of enrolled students and completers because of that, because we can offer it to so many more students. So I would say that's definitely the way that we have grown and improved.
which is amazing. How about Angela? Have you noticed any changes in your time at Springs?
Oh yeah, tremendously. You know, like Jenny mentioned, of course, the growth, but we've fine-tuned so much, and Study.com has been a great, obviously, as we've been talking this whole webinar, it's such a huge addition. And I think that especially when COVID hit and we had to all pivot quickly, and you know, I know for us, the teachers that were not online, I mean, we had a little bit, we were offering online, but that was a really big shift for us. And we ended up getting through that and finding that we were actually really successful being online. And that's why we decided to stay online. So back to what Jenny was saying, that's been one of the positives that came out of you know, the struggle with COVID was, you know, being able to fine tune, and it gave this the teachers as teachers an opportunity to really get better quality content out there, and the results, as Jenny mentioned, just kind of, you know, just kept exploding, the numbers.
Amazing, amazing. How about you, Bernard?
I don't know there's much that I could add other than that every year we've refined our courses more and more and more. And if you were to look at, this is just my 5th year, and if you were to look at my 5th year course compared to when I came in my 1st year, you would not think that my 1st year students learned anything. You know, it's just, and maybe they didn't, I don't know, but but it's just the refinement and the constant, you know, over summer and during the year trying to refine and clean up your course and find the mistakes. That's where I've seen our biggest growth, because I wasn't here at the beginning. I came in just as the 2-class pathway was starting.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've just kind of grown and refined that part of it with my pathway.
I see. Yeah, but I think, you know, something you had all shared as well was the about how the objective, right, or at least the three of yours objective with your students has kind of evolved as well, right? I think Jenny, you had mentioned it's not just about choosing the career, and very much I think what has happened, what you've all shared with me at Springs is that it's no longer this choice between college prep or am I going down the career path. They've now been integrated, and you three have mentioned things about employability, right? So kind of the idea that CTE actually supports and improves existing college prep efforts. Would you guys agree with that?
Oh, yes,
100%.
absolutely. Yeah.
Definitely. I think
Yeah.
when I started my 1st year course, I just talked poorly about, was so focused on what I used to teach already police officers at the academy. You know, and it was very, this is how you do this. This is how you make an arrest. This is how you handcuff someone. This is how you do X, Y, Z, very specific. And when I went to the stakeholder meetings, they were like, we can teach them that in the academy. You taught them that in the academy. What we need is people that are equipped to handle us giving them those skills, people that can write, people that can talk, people that have good morals and ethical backgrounds. And that's what we need you to teach them. And so we've made that pivot from that to this. My course now is focused on more of communication skills, written and oral. And so those kids, even if they decide not to do law enforcement, heaven forbid they go do firefighting, but you know, they're better prepared to go out into the world in general. You know, and even if they choose not to take my career pathway, which more and more of them are not doing now because of, you know, what's going on, but at least I'm sending people out into the world that can handle what they need to in life.
And I think that is so invaluable, right? In what you're providing for your students. And it reminds me of something my mom told me that I've hung on to my whole life. But I remember as I was going through college and I was thinking about career and what I wanted to do, she just said, maybe it'd be easier for you to check off the things you don't want to do, right? And that's what made me realize that many of us pursue college with a career in mind, and then we choose our major, right? And we study it and we do all of that, and then we end up there. But for example, if I said I wanted to be an engineer at 18, I couldn't tell you what an entry-level engineer does for 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
Right? Or maybe very similarly, you know, Bernard, your students, I know cops, I know police people, I know public safety officers. I actually don't know that they sit at their desk for 4 hours typing up reports. Right? So providing the experience, those gold nugget bits of yourself.
And I'm an example. I'm an old man. I graduated high school in 1983, got a college scholarship, full ride to go study computer science, and that's what I was going to do. I didn't graduate college until 2012, and it was in ecology. So major shift because I checked off all those things I didn't want to do, but I had life skills developed through different opportunities that could carry me through, and I had a fruitful career up until I was able to finish college and then pursue a different direction. So, yeah, if we can equip those students any way we can, they're going to be better off.
Exactly, right? And it's picking up those soft skills, those utility skills, as I like to call them. To use baseball as an analogy, if you can play first, second, third, and catch, you have a much better chance of making the team than the guy that just plays one position, right? Or the woman that plays one position as well. So doing that for your students, really spreading out their skill set is just amazing. And thank you so much for the teachers that you all are. And so as we kind of wrap up the conversation here, I do want to take a moment and give each of you the time to talk to our audience and share with them from your own point of view. What do you think other CTE teachers, departments, or schools can take away from your experience?
In
Bernard,
regards to Study.com, I think would be the time saver. Just the fact that I'm not spending every off minute, off hour, even over my summers and breaks, trying to create and refine content. If I haven't, there's still stuff I do create, but if I can find a better lesson on Study.com, I'm sure going to use it, save that time, save my mental health, so I'm better prepared to come into my classroom and not burned out by the time the school year just starts, and give more to my students.
Gotcha. I'll head to Angela and then Jenny.
Yeah, to piggyback on that, I mean, definitely my top three would be the time saver. The personalization is huge for me, and the engagement and being able to, look at a student and give them options, kind of like what you mentioned before, Rob, and being able to open their eyes up to many different options rather than just the old, kind of way we used to think that it's like college is the end all be all. Maybe college is in your future, but like you said, eliminating different things before committing is huge. In the long term, they're going to have much better success that way. So yeah, it's been a game changer for me and for my students. And I really can't go on and on about it much more. I mean, it's like, I really, really am a big believer. There's everything and anything that you can imagine in that library. Like sometimes it's like a rabbit hole. I'll find something and then it's like, oh, whoa, I didn't even know they had this. And then I'll like go down another, pathway and gather even more. So it's amazing. Yeah.
That's so wonderful to share, Angela. And yeah, thank you so much. I think that's really cool to call out as well. College is 4 years, right? Your career could be 30. So in the way that you're preparing students and the way you're all talking to them and preparing them for that, I think is just amazing and outstanding. And last but not least, Jenny.
Yeah, and I want to, Bernard and Angela really hit it, I think. And then so did you, Rob, earlier when you said that we aren't just about preparing students for career or college. It's actually making that connection and bridging that. And I think a lot of CTE teachers, we are hired for our experience, right? Our real world experience, to bring that in and focus on preparing students for career. And that is wonderful. And that's great because students can even go to our career first and then decide, hey, you know what? This experience is driving me towards my college. But it's also important to make that connection in high school between how our career and college related. And Study.com is really able to offer that theory, that college content that we may be able to focus on the career employability skills, while we can pull Study.com to help focus on that college aspect.
That's so wonderful to share. And so thank you again, the three of you for joining us, excuse me. And for the audience, we're going to launch one more poll, and please let us know in that poll response if there are any other CTE focused topics, or really any topics in general you'd like to see in future episodes. As our audience fills out the poll, Bernard, Jenny, and Angela, would you have any final thoughts to share with our audience, whether it's Study.com, whether it has to do with CTE, regardless, anything to leave behind?
I guess I could just
Sorry.
put this out here.
I should have directed it.
That's okay. So, sometimes teachers, we can like have a lot that we feel like is on our shoulders, right? So we care about these students and we want to offer them everything. We want to teach them everything to just, keep doing what you guys are doing, and that even though you don't see it right now, you're doing a great job, and thanks for joining us. And Study.com can really help you shoulder some of that weight.
Thanks so much, Jenny. Angela or Bernard, anything to leave behind for our audience? And final thoughts?
Yeah, Jenny just kind of hit it out of the park there. Yeah, I mean, really the best thing that we can give, and I think more than anything, I know that I come through that, that a little bit of a different lens in terms of, mental health and wellness, but our kids are really struggling right now. It's really an epidemic, and I think that the greatest thing we can give them is more of ourselves, right? And so if we can, like Jenny said, have Study.com to help us shoulder some of that, kind of technical stuff, really that connection is really how we can most impact these students. And I'm a big believer in that. So I'm hoping to see education turn more in this more progressive way, because Study.com is very progressive. And if we can get out of the old paradigm of, teaching within the confines of textbooks and, kind of our old way of thinking, I really think that that's the answer for our future workforce and for our youth and their mental health and wellness. So
You're absolutely right, Angela. I hope that is the direction that we are headed as a country, as a society with education. And I do hope Study.com can be a large part of that as well.
yes, I think so.
And Bernard, before we kind of close down today's session.
I think the two of them pretty much covered everything that we can cover. The students are coming around finally from being out of the classroom for a year, maybe two, depending on where you're at. In California, we were kind of first to shut down our classrooms and go in that direction. And I'm finally starting to see it. My online students, they kind of skipped a beat, but not really. But my academy students, the ones that were in person, were really hurting. And I think they're finally learning how to make the adjustments, and Study.com's just let me give them that time and to be much more giving in my feedback to them, because I'm not spending my time trying to develop other curriculum and wait. I don't want to say wasting time developing my own videos and things like that, but you know what I mean, is it's there and I can add on to it and supplement it rather than having to create raw stuff and not have the energy then to give my students time online that they need to really develop some relationships.
Greatly shorten that production timeline, that cycle, right?
Definitely.
Absolutely. So to close out the session today, thank you so much, Angela, Bernard, and Jenny, and thank you to our audience as well. As we wrap down and wrap up here, the final poll will just be out there to see and ask if any of you would like to get us to get in touch with you, or your school partnerships manager to get in touch with you following the session today. So go ahead and please complete that. But otherwise, thank you again. And thank you so much, Angela, Bernard, and Jenny, for joining us today and sharing everything that we were able to discuss. I think this was a wonderful session, and there's so much amazing content and some great stories shared as well. So last one to our audience, the webinar recording will be posted in a day or two to the page where you registered, or you should expect to receive a follow-up email with the recording. And we absolutely look forward to you joining future webinars. Thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Team Springs Charter.
Thank you.
guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye now.